Chapter 7 of In the Field, 1914-1915. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by FNH. In the Field, 1914-1915. By Marcel Dupont. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Sister Gabrielle. It was a very dark night. How were we to find our way about the little unknown town of Elverdinghe, near which our regiment had just been quartered? We could hardly make out the low houses with closed windows and long roofs of thatch or slate, and kept stumbling on the greasy and uneven cobblestones. Now and again the corner of a street or the angle of a square was lit up dimly by a ray of light filtering through half-closed shutters. I went along haphazard, preceded by my friend B. We were quite determined to find beds and to sleep in peace. After our 4 days' fighting near Bixschoote, we had been sent to the rear 10 kilometres away from the line of fire to get 24 hours' rest. Had arrived at nightfall, and found much difficulty in putting up our men and horses in the small farms around the town. But no sooner had they all found places, no sooner had the horses got their nose bags on and the kitchen fires been lighted, than B., who was always anxious about the comforts of his board and lodging, said to me, "There is only one thing for us to do. We are to rest. We must find a bed and a well-furnished table. I'd rather go to bed an hour later and sleep between sheets after a good meal than lie down at once on straw with an empty stomach. Listen to me. Let us go on to that nice Belgian town over there, only a few steps further. It is hardly 10 o'clock. It will be devilish bad luck if we can't find a good supper and good quarters. We need not trouble about anything else. Let us think first of serious matters." So we started for the little town, which seemed to be wrapped in sleep. We knocked at the doors, but no one opened. No doubt the houses were all full of soldiers. No one offered us any hospitality, in spite of all B.'s objurgations, now beseeching, now imperious. In despair I suggested at last that we should go back to our squadron and lie down by our horses. But B. would not hear of it, and still clung to his idea to have a good dinner and sleep in a bed. Just then we saw a dark figure creeping noiselessly along under a wall. B. at once went up to it and caught it by the arm. It was a poor old woman carrying a basket and a jug of milk. He said: Madame, have pity on 2 poor weary half-starved soldiers." But she couldn't give us any information. Speaking in bad French, interspersed with Flemish, she gave us to understand that the little town was full of troops, and at that hour everybody was asleep. "And what is there in that large white building, where the windows are alight?" The good woman explained that it was a convent, where nuns took in the old people of the country. They could not give lodging to soldiers, but B. had already made up his mind. That was where we were to sleep. Leaving the old woman aghast, he went with long strides to the iron railing which surrounded a little garden in front of the convent. I tried in vain to make him understand that we could not invade these sacred precincts. "Leave it to me," he said. "I'll speak to them." He pushed the iron gate, which opened with a creak, and I shut it after him. I felt somewhat uneasy as I followed B., who crossed the garden with a rapid stride. I felt uneasy at the thought of his essentially military eloquence, and of the use to which he proposed to put it. But I knew, too, that he was not easily induced to abandon a resolution he had once taken. True, he did not often make one, but this time he seemed to be carrying out a very definite plan. The best thing was to submit and await the result of his attempt. We went up 3 steps and felt for the knocker. "Here it is," said B., and he lifted it and knocked hard. What a dismal sound it made in that sleeping town! I felt as though we had just committed an act of sacrilege. We listened, and heard through the door the noise of chairs dragged over the stone floor, then a light footstep approaching, a sound of keys and bolts, and the door was gently opened and held ajar. B. with a bow: "What we are doing is this. I know, most unusual, but we are dying of hunger and very tired, and so far nobody has been willing to open their door to us. Could we not have something to eat here, and sleep in a bed?" The Sister looked at us, and appeared not to understand. However, I was more at ease when I saw she was neither frightened nor displeased. She was a very old nun, dressed in black, and held in her hand a little lamp which flickered in the night breeze. Her face was furrowed with deep wrinkles, and her skinny hand held before the lamp seemed transparent. She made up her mind at once. Her face lit up with a kind smile, and she signed to us to come in with words which were probably friendly. This was a supposition, for the worthy nun only spoke Flemish, and we could not understand anything she said. She carefully pushed the bolts again, placed a lamp on the floor, and made a sign for us to wait. Then she went away with noiseless steps, and we were left alone. "You see," said B., "it is all going swimmingly. Now that we have got in, you must leave everything to me." The flickering lamp lighted the hall dimly. The walls were bare, and there was no furniture but some rush chairs set in a line against the partition. Opposite the door there was a simple wooden crucifix, and the stretched-out arms seemed to bid us welcome. A perfume of hot soup came from the door the old Sister had just shut. "I say," said B., "did you smell it? I believe it is cabbage soup, and if so, I shall take a second helping." "Just wait a bit," I replied. "I'll wager they're going to turn us out." From the other side of the door, by which the portress had just disappeared, we heard a voice calling, "Sister Gabrielle! Sister Gabrielle!" And a moment after the same door opened, and another nun came in very quietly and rather embarrassed, it seemed to me. She came towards us. "Sister Gabrielle, your modesty will certainly suffer from all the good I am going to say of you. But I am wrong. You will not suffer, for you certainly will never read the pages I have scribbled during the course of this war, at odd times, as I could, in bivouacs and billets. But I have vowed to keep a written record of the pictures which have charmed or moved me most during this campaign. If I ever survive it, I want to be able to read them again in my latter days. I want to have them read by those who belong to me, and to show them what kind of life we led during those unforgettable days. And it is not always the battles which leave the most lively impressions. How many delightful things one could relate that have happened outside the sphere of action! What memories of nights passed in the strangest places, as the chances of the march decreed, nights of bitterness during the retreat, nights of fever during the advance, nights of depression in the trenches! What kindly welcomes, what beautiful and what noble figures one might describe! Sister Gabrielle, as you will never read this, and as your modesty will not suffer, let me tell the story of the welcome my friend B. and I received that evening at the convent of Elverdinghe. Sister Gabrielle came towards us. How pretty she was in the coif that framed her face! How large her blue eyes looked! They really were so, but a touch of excitement made them seem larger still. Above all, she had an enchanting smile, a smile of such kindness that we at once felt at ease and sure of obtaining what we wanted. She spoke in a sweet and musical voice, hesitating just a little in the choice of her words, although she spoke French very correctly. "The Sister Superior has sent me to you," she said, "because I am the only one here who can speak French. Messieurs les officers, welcome." She said it quite simply, and stood quite straight in her black dress, her arms hanging beside her. She might have been a picture of other days, an illuminated figure from a missal. We looked at each other and smiled too, happy to find so unexpected a welcome. B. was now quite self-possessed. "Sister Gabrielle," he said, "see what a wretched state we are in. Our clothes covered with mud, our faces not washed since I don't know when. We have just gone 4 days without sleep, almost without food, and we have never stopped fighting. Could you not take in 2 weary, famished soldiers for one night?" Sister Gabrielle retained her wonderful smile. Without moving her arms, she slightly raised her 2 hands, which showed white against the black cloth of her dress. Those hands seemed to say, "I should like to very much, but I cannot." And at the same time the smile said, "We ought not to, but it shall be managed, nevertheless. Come," she said, "in any case we can give you something to eat." And she took up the little lamp. She went first, opened the door at the end of the passage, and we followed her, delighted. We were dazzled as we came into this new room by the brilliance of the lamps that lit it. It was the convent kitchen. How clean and bright everything was! The copper saucepans shone resplendently. The black and white pavement looked like an ivory chessboard. 2 sisters were sitting peeling vegetables, which they threw into a bowl of water. An enormous pot on the well-polished stove was humming its inviting monotone. It was this pot which exhaled the delicious smell that had greeted us when we entered the house.